All right, folks, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bucks of America podcast. I am your host, Jeff Vance, and the hat of the week goes out to Veteran Innovative Products. This is their new logo and design. So I sat down with Matt here a few weeks ago, and that episode will be coming up here shortly, so be on the lookout for it. And my guest today is Camron Stover. Now, he is the main guy behind huntinggeardeals.com. And it is a good source for those who are looking to replace gear, but also try to get new gear for either to get others involved or anything else like that. So it's a good place to check out instead of going to your big box stores, because it's like he's going to be able to provide you some really good deals before you go out and make that purchase and give you some education, because the site does provide feedback and product reviews. So this way then you can make a very well-rounded, educated decision on your product. But man, Cam, it was nice chatting with you in the preamble of the conversation here. But how's everything going for you?
Hey, I appreciate it. I'm glad to be back. It's pretty interesting. You was talking about VIP Archery. They did a fantastic job with their color scheme and logo this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, they really did.
Impressed.
Matt and those guys did a grand job of branding themselves in the outdoor world and stuff. And I just got a whole care package of a bunch of their new broadheads, because they released 4 this year. They released 2 guillotines, a bomber, the Ranger, and the Ranger, and all of them provide different aspects to cutting and such like that. Now, when Matt came on and we had a conversation about it, we discussed the engineering behind everything, and he'd been working on all these broadheads for 6+ years before he finally took them to market. And it was really interesting to listen to him how each one is designed, and so because he took the time to break down each broadhead and what makes sense of it. And he's even coming out with a new insert system where it's like, let's say you destroy your arrow, but the insert's still good, you can actually take and reuse an insert into a new arrow, because it does not revolve around a glue system. You don't glue it into place. You actually just insert it, and it has like a locking pin and actually keeps it in place. Because what had happened during the pandemic and such is that they needed to figure out a way to meet the demand. Now, Matt is only one of the very few companies that actually produces everything stateside, where a majority of the inserts are coming from Vietnam, Philippines, China. Well, his is all in Texas. And so so to meet that demand, they just went ahead and did that. They have a new brass and steel insert system where you can actually break off the weights. This way you can figure out how much you want to have for your FOC and such. And so it's a very well-rounded system to help just the average archer that wants to get into tinkering, but don't have the saws and stuff like that. And they want something lower tech. So now you can take your inserts from one arrow to the next one. So as a hunter progresses, we always buy new sets of arrows. Like I started with blood sport arrows. Now I'm shooting Maxima Reds, and just because of the quality and the expectation I have out of them. So everybody has an evolution of buying new products, and that's what I think that's really a good way to covering that market.
Yeah, they've really turned that company around from where they started at to where they're at now. And that really made a statement at the ATA show this year with that better branding and just simple yet stood out and a quality product behind it as well.
Mm-hmm. And with the color scheme, it's like now it's like it's like a male. It's not geared just towards males. It has that unisex attitude towards their apparel. So it's something that anybody's comfortable wearing.
Yep, I agree.
So now, we were talking about your bracket you did this year. Why don't you tell us, like, what was the inspiration behind the bracket, and then moving into how it all ended up? Because you had a good turnout for it.
Yeah. So I like to try to do something to get people involved. So as far as the bracket, like NCAA tournament wrapped up in March, beginning of April. So I'm sitting there trying to get all the winners lined up. It'll be a while before everybody gets their prizes, but I just try to reach out to some retailers and stuff like that in the industry, see if they want to participate. And like companies like KUIU and Palmetto State Armory, some of the bigger names out there jumped in and provided some great prizes. And there really wasn't a whole lot of like, what do I get in return other than just being a part of it? So it's just free to join. Everybody kind of gets a chance to participate. And then I'll just start going through the list, however that shakes up, and start throwing prizes that we get, kind of letting people pick, not really assigning products and prizes to those positions, just kind of letting people pick what they want. And it really surprises me when somebody looks at a brand and say there's $100 gift card versus a $50 gift card. but that $50 gift card is from a brand that they trust a little bit more. And
Yes.
they're more willing to take that smaller dollar amount right up front because they want to either test that product or brand, or they trust that brand. And I was extremely surprised when people were taking products or gift cards right up front. And I'm like, you're missing out on this $100 or $200 product. But it makes sense when it all shakes out. So it's pretty cool when you can put value to your brand like that.
Mm-hmm. And anybody like any sign of discount is going to help them get that piece of material they've been eyeing up, especially if you're to look at Sitka, Kudu, any major brands out that the quality is there, and where it's for the average man, it's a little expensive, but for somebody that's like understands that brand, the quality, they're willing to go fork over that extra buck for it.
Oh, absolutely.
So how was your 2021 season then?
So the fall 2021 season started out great. I mean, couldn't have been any better, actually. So West Virginia has an urban archery season. I was lucky enough to get a tag for that. So opening morning, I'm in the stand, and my girlfriend's son has an interest in hunting, but he'd never been hunting before. And I was trying to figure out how I can incorporate him into this hunt, but due to the rules of this hunt, you have to hunt from an elevated platform, like 8 foot or higher. So out of a tree stand, and he wasn't ready for tree stands and no area to like put in an elevated box blind or something like that. Not spending that kind of money. So I'm like, how can I incorporate him into this hunt and let him enjoy it and get to watch it? So,
all right.
First step was like, okay, I'm going to video it so he can at least watch the video. And the next I was like, well, maybe I can position my vehicle in a way far enough away that where he can get a pair of binoculars and kind of watch me from afar. So after a little bit of work, I figured out like, okay, this is where I can park my truck, that it's kind of hidden, but he can still watch. So he's actually in my vehicle with his mom, like butt crack of dawn before daylight. He's all excited. She's asleep in the passenger seat, and he's actually got my tracking dog in the vehicle with him as well. So it breaks daylight, and I'm like, I'm shooting the first nice doe that walks by. And sure enough, about an hour into the hunt, I've got plenty of deer around me. It seems like they're all little bucks, and a doe feeds out, and I get the camera on her, and I can't really communicate with him because he's so far away. And I'm just hoping he's watching. So I shoot this doe, and she runs around the base of the tree and literally just falls right in front of it. And I'm like, well, that never happens. Like, we don't get to track it or anything. Like, that was supposed to be the fun part with the dog. So I'm sitting there and I'm all excited. I'm like, well, I can kill 2 deer. So I'll, let me check out what I got to do. So I get online to West Virginia's new online check-in system, because I just enrolled it. And I'm probably the first person in the state at this point in time checking in the deer, because the season had just opened like an hour ago. So I'm trying to check this deer in, and it doesn't work. The online check-in system's not ready yet. So I'm like, man, what do you do? So I call it, and I'm like, I'm going to check this deer in. So I sit here and go through all this, typing in your numbers and all this stuff, and finally get it checked in. And I look up, and here comes a buck. And I'm like, okay, wasn't really here for a buck. And it's a 10-point, velvet, beautiful little 10-point, probably 120 inches. And I'm like, that'll work. So I no sooner turn around, grab my bow, flip the camera on, and this deer's 20 yards looking at he's literally sniffing the doe that I had shot. I slipped an arrow into him. He runs directly towards my truck, which is 100 yards away or whatever it was. And it runs towards it. And on the way there, it actually falls down. So meanwhile, I'm in the stand. I'm doing all this crazy stuff with all these deer around me, trying to check this deer in. Come to find out, I didn't even have to legally check the first one in before I could kill the second one. That was a situation where I was like, I wanted to make sure I was on top of the game, but I went above and beyond on that one. But in the meantime, he's given his mom the play-by-play of this hunt and how it's shaking out. So I come down out of the stand, and I'm all excited. So I kind of don't want to mess up the blood trail. So I sneak out and around, and I go to the truck, and we get out, and he starts telling me all about it and how cool it was. And I was like, listen, buddy, this isn't usually how this works out. And, so we go on, and we play with the tracking dog, even though we didn't really need it. He got to watch that aspect of the dog, because he'd been kind of seen the dog as a pet, but hadn't seen that dog work much. And we got to gut his first deer and let him do all that part of it and go to the process. dresser and from start to finish. And we got to eat it. And so he got to see all this from his very first experience. So that rolled into, okay, now he's got a desire to hunt. So he starts tagging along on some squirrel hunts, and we go squirrel hunting for the first time, and it didn't go as planned. He's shooting at a squirrel that's not in the same tree that he's shooting in a tree that the squirrel wasn't in. I'm like, okay, I need to rethink this. I need to be a little better.
Okay.
So we spend a little bit more time practicing, and we go out the next time, and he gets his confidence up, and he misses two or three shots, and he finally gets his first one. And we're both excited. And I'm like, buddy, we don't have to quit. We keep on going. And man, as soon as that light switch, after he got his first squirrel, the next two squirrels that stepped out were dead before he had the gun up. I mean, so on his second squirrel hunt, he had 3 squirrels, 1 red squirrel, which was pretty cool. I know I hunted for years before I even seen one, and he's killed one on his first day. But had a fun season, traveled around a little bit, went out to Missouri. I think my goal for Missouri was to do something a little different. I wanted to cover a bunch of different ground, and I found a prairie, and I like spot and stalk hunting. So I'm like, I'll go out to that prairie. There's probably not a whole lot of people out there. And sure enough, I got out there. It started breaking daylight. I started jumping deer, and I get out to this area to glass, and I think I should go into the more remote area rather than like this nice little walking trail. And I'm over here glassing, and sure enough, over by this nice little walking trail, there's a doe and a buck running around. So I get in front of this buck. Sure enough, he gets 40 yards. I draw back. He runs off. Daggone it. I'll come back tomorrow. So the next morning, I'm back in there glassing. He's in the exact same spot. And I thought, there's no way he should be in there. And I watched him bed down. And I was at 600 and some yards, and I stalked into 40 yards on this deer. He stands up out of his bed. I slip an arrow, what I think is perfect. And what come to find out was there was a little branch, and it wasn't even a tree. It was like just a brushy or a woody bush about 1/4 of an inch thick, and it deflected my broadhead just enough to where the arrow didn't actually penetrate the deer. It just kind of skipped down the rib cage. But when I threw the binos up, I could see blood right behind the rib cage. I was like, smoke this deer. I was all excited. I go to grab the arrow, and the arrow's clean as a whistle. And I spent 4 or 5 hours tracking, looking for this deer, never seen it again, and come to a conclusion that it was just a flesh wound, and trying to put all those pieces together of what had happened. So I was crushed. Nice deer too. Probably, I know it had 6 on one side and 5 on the other. Beautiful public land deer on like the second day of the hunt or second morning of the hunt, whatever it was. So I bounced around to a couple more properties and never really found an area that didn't have a lot of people in. And one of the last places that I hunted, I got into this, one of the biggest, like you bring up the map and you're like, oh, that's the biggest pinch point on this property between feed and bed. Everybody and their brother is going to hunt right here. So I'm like, that's where I'll go. I'll check it out first evening. I get in the stand, and I'm like, somebody's hunted here. There's no way. It's too easy. So I go overlooking this bean field, kind of higher vantage point, and I watch a beautiful 140-inch deer walk straight through that pinch point, and I'm like, that's a bad decision. So I get out there the next morning. I hunt all day I get in the stand before daylight. I hunt all day. I don't come out. Nothing. That deer doesn't show up.
Okay.
I couldn't understand why. I was like, man, I didn't bump this deer. I knew where he was bedded. I basically seen him get up, and he didn't show up. So I walked back to the truck because my hunt's about over with at this point in time. And I ran into a guy, and he's like, man, I shot a big buck right down below where you was hunting at. I'm like, okay. I said, and he told me where, and he was literally hunting right where that deer was bedded at. So as that deer was coming back to bed, this guy shot it.
Was this the day before or that morning?
This was like the first day I seen the deer go through the pinch point. I come back in the next morning thinking I would hunt all day, and he would bed down, and he would come back through that pinch point that evening. He killed that deer like midday as that deer was coming back.
Okay. All right.
So, and he shot it, and it went over to private. So he was trying to figure out how to get, and he'd hunted this property for a long time. He told me and stuff. So he was very familiar with the landowner and stuff. And he had a buddy there helping him out. So at this point in time, I'm pretty deflated because I had bounced around probably to 5 or 6 different tracks or areas on public ground between the time where I shot that buck and gave it a flesh wound to the time that I'm at right now. And I'm basically ready to give up. So I get about 200 or 300 yards from the truck and I run into another guy. He's like, man, I shot a big old buck from the ground with my crossbow out in the middle of this field. He said, you'd never believe it. And I'm like, oh yeah. He said, yeah, my buddy's here. He's going to help me drag it out. And I'm like, I'm going home. So I go back to the Airbnb, and I actually went out to some private ground, hunted on the way home, met some awesome people, had hunted some beautiful properties, seen some nice deer, just wasn't the caliber that I was there to kill. And came home from Missouri without a tag, but a great time. Stopped in Kentucky, hunted Kentucky a little bit, saw some dandies right beside the road, but not where I could legally hunt. So,
yeah, isn't that how it always goes?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was an area there, probably 150 class deer right between the interstate and the call it the median or whatever, but it was like in a low area.
Yeah.
Just a beautiful deer. And I just sit there and watched him, tried to video him with my phone. But I mean, I was sitting on the road driving from point A to B. And really, Kentucky was a bust. The areas that I was in Kentucky just didn't produce what I wanted to. A lot of people. Talked to Corey Anderson, Bellator fighter. He's actually got a title fight coming up on Friday of next week. He was down in Kentucky hunting the same time I was, and he wasn't having a whole lot of luck either. So, and he was hunting close to the public on some private. Come home from Kentucky, hunted West Virginia and Ohio. Honestly, didn't put in a whole lot of work after that. Really devoted my time to my business, and kind of in that point in time where like this business has been like a part-time side hustle, and I really want to try to make it into a full-time job.
Yeah.
And I wanted to test to see how much, if I put in the work, would it pay dividends? And I think so. I mean, I'm confident that by the end of this year, I can go full-time. And I'm thinking maybe September, maybe November, step away and do this full-time and not turning back. So it's been fun. And the season to me was a success. I mean, anytime you get to introduce somebody and light that fire for them for a future generation to start hunting and then get some time in the woods for yourself, it's always a good time.
Oh yes. I wanted to circle back to the urban hunting. So how did you get yourself in a situation where you can do an urban hunt?
Okay, so the state of West Virginia, either you can have them in the city if the city votes and approves it, and then also I think in some like small, like little residential areas, if you're like little, what do you call these? Homeowners Association approves it. So I'm actually in the city limits hunting, and then the minimum property size is 3 contiguous acres. So like I could have 3 property owners lined up and each person owns an acre, and then I can get that little block legal, like signed off by the county and the DNR stating that it's big enough for me to legally hunt. It's archery only. It comes in early. So like beginning of September, right around that time frame is when it actually starts, and it runs through the end of December. We're allowed to kill 5 does and then 2 bucks at a maximum. So I think you can actually kill 7 deer, but only 2 of those can be bucks. And you got to kill a doe before you can kill a buck.
Okay.
So it's really fun. I mean, usually you don't see a lot of big deer come from those areas, especially where I'm hunting at. But they are there. I mean, there was a guy killed a buck that I think he pushed Boone last year, like around 170.
Okay.
And then this past year down in the Kanawha County in one of their urban hunts, there was a 200-incher killed. And West Virginia is not known for that caliber of deer, but that was a phenomenal deer. And Kanawha County's got some very large areas for their urban hunts.
All right.
Morgantown, West Virginia. So they do theirs a little different. And they do, so Morgantown's home of the West Virginia University, the Mountaineers. So you get a lot of people, a lot of younger people in that area, but they make sure, I think all their meat has to go towards their food bank. So they raise they get hundreds of pounds of venison donated into that. So that's one of the cool things. And then we've also got hunters helping the hungry throughout the state where you can donate deer to as well. But so it's population control because people are invading the areas where these deer used to live. And that's basically why we have those. It's simply for population control, the conservation side of that. And then good things come from it. I mean, that Morgantown food bank.
I'm Jake with HHA Sports, and today we're going to talk a little bit about our dovetail sights and how they're going to fit on the new Mathews V3X. So as you'll see, I have a Tetra Max Tournament Edition sight on this 33-inch V3X. All of our dovetail sights, the Tetra and the Tetra Max, will fit on the V3X. Also, in the next couple of weeks, you'll see us come out with a shorter dovetail version. It'll just be our short bar version, which will also fit on the V3X on both the 29 and 33-inch model. One question that we've gotten pretty frequently lately is the windage adjustments on your Tetra and Tetra Max bow sights on the new Mathews bow. And this year we came out with the infinite adjust plate, which you'll see on the front end of your sight. So when you put this infinite adjust plate on, you'll want to either flip it to the inside or the outside. And for the inline mounting sight options, such as the V3X, you're going to want to make sure that the infinite adjust plate is to the outside of your infinite adjust channel. This will allow for optimal windage adjustments. So you'll also be able to find the infinite adjust bracket on our website if you're already shooting a Tetra or Tetra Max Tournament Edition sight. Another way that you can get your HHA to fit V3X is by buying our conversion kit, which you can find on our website at hhasports.com. We'll be selling those at retail around $60. So basically the only thing you'll have to do is you'll have to take apart your sight at the third access point, and you can convert any Tetra or Tetra Max sight. So if you have a fixed frame, you can get that into a dovetail. So like mentioned before, any dovetail sight will fit a Tetra or a Tetra Max, as well as our short bar version. For more information, you can visit our website at www.hhasports.com.
Reaps benefits for it all year long because of that hunt.
Yeah, La Crosse has a metro hunt. No, I had a chance to talk to Matt Krabonic, and he hunts in Pennsylvania, up in Philadelphia. He actually hunts urban there and such. And they're set up as a club to be part of, and you have to pretty much be invited to get into it. You have to go through a testing process just to make sure that you can be able to put your arrow in a 20-yard side, because they want to keep that close shots, that the quick ethical shots. This way, then they're going to be a quick drop and such, and go from there. Because he was saying, because they primarily hunt the park system, and that park system can be kind of tricky in how you set up and such, because it's like he's had some interesting interactions with people, because some people were just curious about it, and some people be bringing out the Karen or their Kevin out of themselves about the whole scenario. But he's saying that it's not uncommon for those to actually put a arrow on a deer, but all of a sudden that deer would run out and then all of a sudden run into a street, and it's a necessary situation. They need to. They don't advertise about it. It's pretty much, you have to hear about it from someone that actually does it, and because they don't want the publicity from it. They want to keep it as low key, because there's a lot of older hunters that are still in it, so they want to keep this as a positive thing, because it's like this is their way to get away from their day to day and such. But he wasn't able to capitalize anything. But it was a really interesting conversation to have about how that it was all set up, and especially even hunting in Philadelphia, because you wouldn't think about that, being able to hunt in such a big community.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what the meat eater did. Mark Kenyon went down to Washington, D.C. this year and hunted. So, I mean, there's these opportunities are all mostly countrywide in all these big cities. And we've seen cities like New York spend hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to euthanize and come up with all these creative ways that just cruel and inhumane in order to euthanize these animals and do population control instead of allowing hunters to come in. Some cities have went in and paid people, like they call them sharpshooters, to go in and kill all these deer out, when you have hunters like you and I that are willing to go out and perform our job. Yeah, we're willing to pay, yes, but we're also willing to donate towards conservation and do our jobs as hunters by controlling that population and then putting that venison to good use, whether it be within our communities or within our home.
Yeah, that is the upside of it. I know they did sharpshooters up in Minneapolis at their airport up there as well. Steve Ranella had him on their podcast back when I think they were below 100 episodes, and that was an interesting to listen to that, because he said he would kill a lot of deer just because he was good at it. But it was one of those things where they were paying him a ridiculous amount of money to do it all, and it's like I said, I just opening up to the public. So it's difficult when you deal with a bluer state when it comes down to it, because that does play a role in permissions and issues like that. Because I know, like, if you look at a scheme of things, if you start looking out west, I know Colorado, Arizona were having issues with the predator hunting, like hunting big cats and bears, stuff like that, and they're trying to get rid of it, eliminate those seasons. And it's like, that's something we don't want to have happen. So I know out west they really rose to the occasion to kind of put the foot down to stop that, because otherwise you're just going to have these larger predators coming into town. It's like that you need to have a balance. And even in here in Wisconsin, we're having issues with being able to provide hunting, because it's like they're not voting with science, they're just based off of feelings. And with Madison and Milwaukee and Green Bay and Eau Claire, that these bigger cities are kind of they have enough of an impact where they can actually create harm to the ecosystem, because they don't fully understand what's all going on and why we do such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the stuff that Sportsman's Alliance has been producing lately about some of the rights that we've been losing, like bear seasons that have been completely canceled because anti-hunters have been speaking up. And just here recently, I read an article where there was some public ground that they were opening them up, like not wildlife management areas, wildlife refuge areas. And they weren't allowing the hunting community to make a public vote or public opinion or voice that. They were only allowing that lawsuit that was filed to be basically spoken on by those extremists that did not want hunting to be. And it's like over 2 million acres. And basically they just told the hunting community, sit down, shut up, and let the government do its job. And we could talk about that stuff.
Oh yeah, that is so true. Now, so I want to get back to your girlfriend's son, like how he went through all that experience. So do you think he is going to be ready for turkey season?
Yeah. So actually we have a turkey hunt coming up Saturday before Easter. So this coming weekend, I know we're filming, or we're recording a little earlier than what this is going to come out. So hopefully we'll have results of this hunt pretty soon. But yeah, he's getting there. He's ready. I've got his camouflage and got him a lot more familiar with using a gun and stuff like that. Turkey hunting is one of those things if you're not in a ground blind, it's really difficult to do, especially if you're not hunting what we call field birds, like down where I'm from originally. It's all mountain birds, and it's just really hard to get the upper hand on a lot of these birds. So do I expect him to go out and kill one? Absolutely not, but he's going to be there. I want him to hear that gobble, hear those birds wake up, how that communicates. So we don't have very many animals on the East Coast that you can actually communicate with and fool with noise like that and call them in. So to add that new aspect into it, he's seen deer, he's seen small game like squirrels, and just tagging him along. I mean, anytime I get a chance to get somebody like that out in the woods and share that experience with, it makes a lasting impression, whether you get to pull the trigger or not.
Mm-hmm. And now, I don't know if you've heard this, but Iowa just passed that you can use a 410 and a 28 gauge for bird hunting. I thought that was awesome, because now you're able to get those younger generations, because a 12 gauge and a 20 gauge to a preteen boy that 8 to 12 years old range, it's a lot of power in their hands, stuff like that. But able to introduce them with a smaller caliber like that with still a deadly accuracy, I think that's just a grand scheme. And like I was looking at some of the forums, and they're getting some hate. Like our governor was getting some hate for it, but it's like, I think that's genius, because now you're able to capture that younger environment. Now, will he be able? Now, can he use a smaller caliber? Does he have to use a 20 or a 12 gauge?
No, they can use a 410 in West Virginia. So
good.
That's what we're going with. And with the TSS loads now, the tungsten shot, I mean, you're looking at an accuracy rate up to 40 yards that you're effectively killing turkeys with just a 410. So it's hard to find ammo right now. And I personally haven't been able to find any, but luckily I've got a gun and a box of ammo lined up that somebody's going to let us borrow. But that really helps out, because I wouldn't turn over my 12 gauge to a 10-year-old kid and say, here, just pull the trigger and hold on, because it ain't going to work. I mean, you're going to give that youth, if they're not exposed to those kind of guns, and more prepared for it. Because yes, I grew up shooting higher caliber guns at an early age, and he's not ready for that. So if I expose him to that 12 gauge that I've got, he's not going to want to do that again after he pulls the trigger the first time. And when I was about his age, a 16 gauge put 10 stitches between my eyes and sent me to the hospital. So definitely don't want to have that negative side effect that I had as a kid.
Yeah. You're lucky you didn't get, you end up having a bad experience with it, stop hunting altogether. Because I mean, that could be very traumatic, especially having going and getting stitches.
Oh, absolutely. Luckily, I think there's a little part of me that's designed to be a hunter, so it didn't faze me one bit.
No little setback like that. Yeah, I've had my fair share of big old bruises on my right shoulder from hunting with a 12 gauge, because all my dad would use was 12 gauges. But when he got his 1100, it was a whole different setup, because the way Remington really worked the gas into the gas system, and it doesn't hit as hard as my old Mossberg 495A, which is specifically designed as a turkey gun. That sumbitch kicked like a mule, because gun was built back in the 60s. So it's like all that energy went right through the stock into your body. Like you get upwards like 15 rounds, you're gonna have a big old welt on your shoulder, whatever you use to shoot with. But I'm glad they're able to like have that flexibility. Now, what about crossbows too? Is that something he interested in to buy with, or does he want to stick following your lead with a compound?
I can't recall right off the bat if we can use crossbows during turkey season or not. I don't know. I wouldn't, not the route that I would go, but as far as for deer hunting, the crossbow route is definitely 100% where I'm going to start him off in that direction. The ability to utilize a crossbow, and as someone who was very opposed to that in the beginning, because I knew what it opened up, the negative side of it that could bring. But after seeing the positives and how many kids and how many new hunters have been able to pick up a crossbow and learn how to shoot from a rest and be involved in the sport of hunting for more time frame, because the gun seasons that we have in my state are limited just for a couple weeks. But you open it up to our crossbow.
Hey everyone, Jake with HJ Sports. We got some exciting news today. Our new Tetra line of bow sights, the Tetra LT, and the Tetra Max are going to be compatible with the new UltraView scopes. So we'll be selling the Windage along with our infinite adjust plate to make the UltraView compatible with all of our Tetra line sights. So you'll be able to take a Tetra Max, a Tetra LT. You can also take the Tetra Max in a Hunter Edition frame or a Dovetail, and the same with the Tetra. So you'll have a bunch of different options to put your favorite scope along with your favorite frame of your choice. So when you're looking to make the UltraView compatible with any of our Tetra line sights, you're going to want to make sure that you buy the complete kit that we're going to be selling. We'll be selling it to dealers as well on our website. You're going to want to make sure that you're getting the infinite adjust plate and the Windage. It's important that we use our Windage system, as that is the one that will be compatible with the UltraView scope. So when you're looking at purchasing a complete sight to get with the UltraView, you can either convert your current Tetra over to fit the UltraView. You'll need the Windage then. And if you're looking at completely starting from scratch, buying one of our sights and putting the UltraView scope on it, you'll want to purchase one of our Tetra 900 frames, which, as I mentioned before, you can get it in a variety of different options. You can visit our website to see all the details there. So along with a new piece that we'll be selling to make the UltraView compatible with the HHAs, you're still going to get all of the features that you would normally get in an HHA sight. You'll get your second access completely independent from your 20-yard elevation adjustments on the infinite adjust bracket. Still get third access. All the features that you're accustomed to seeing in an HHA sight, you'll still get with an UltraView scope. You can check the video in our description to see how we installed the UltraView scope onto a Tetra 900 frame. So the HHA components on this sight do carry a 100% lifetime warranty, just as any other HHA product does. This is a product that we're really excited to introduce to you, and really excited to partner up with UltraView on this project. For more information, you can visit our website at www.hjsports.com.
Season runs concurrent with our traditional archery season with compounds and stuff like that. So not only do I have more time to spend with that person in the woods teaching and training, but also they have more opportunities and more time spent. So if I only get to hunt one time during the rifle season, I don't get as excited about it because I don't get to keep doing that. But if I get to hunt in September when it's nicer and warmer, it's a lot easier to introduce a kid that's never hunted into that warmer area that fits their agenda. Whereas to push them into that November and December and even January seasons that some of the other estates have, and put them into those cold, miserable elements and expect them to really want to be there. So I'm excited. I don't own a crossbow right now, but I'm definitely going to invest in a higher quality crossbow. I've got my eye on a Raven. That's kind of where I want to be at, because if I figure if I'm going to buy one, I'm going to buy the best. And I'm strong. I've shot some of the Ravens. I really like the size, the compactness, and accuracy, and the fact that they're easy to draw back and stuff like that, as far as cranking and stuff like that. So that's kind of where we're going for that for the this coming season. And luckily he'll be able to hunt either West Virginia and Ohio with that crossbow concurrently with archery season. We can run off one of those bog death grips and he doesn't have to shoulder it. So it's going to be fun. I'm really thankful for that opportunity, not only to introduce new hunters, but also to keep the hunting community around as well. I mean, there's a lot of people as they get a little older, compound bow hunting is just not in the cards anymore.
Yeah.
This past season, I had a shoulder injury and I didn't think I was going to be able to finish my season out with a bow. It really cut down my practice time, and I finally just told myself, I'm going to save that. If this shoulder is going to tear, I'm going to save that shot for when it counts rather than on the bags when practicing. So come November, December, I didn't spend any time practicing because I was just babying the shoulder.
Yeah.
Now I'm good, but at that time I was thinking I'm going to have to switch it up into a crossbow if things don't get better. And I think that I had that opportunity if needed.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but I tried to do the same. I tried introducing my daughter into using a crossbow because it was just took her to Shields, and the nice thing was they had two gals there, so I was like, well, this is gonna be good because these gals both hunt, they both use crossbow, they both use compound, so maybe having another set of voices walking her through and teaching her and stuff like that, maybe that would kind of inspire her. But then she was polite enough to tell me, it's like, Dad, I don't have the patience for it. I was like, all right, I appreciate your honesty. So that saved me $1,000 right there. But I was kind of hoping that would be, because then, and not only for her using it, but then I can also maybe get other folks out there too. Because my dad doesn't deer hunt anymore, but it's like getting a crossbow in his hands because his shoulders are all messed up. I mean, his working on a farm, like he's so old school that he didn't know he was blind until he was in school. That's how. Yeah, that's how they found out he needed bifocals at that age, because it's like he lived out in the farm, in the rural farm in Iowa. I mean, they didn't have indoor plumbing until the 70s. I mean, he was born in 53, so all throughout the 50s and 60s, their toilet was 50 or 20 yards out from the house, and it's like, this is Iowa and not necessarily big buck land, but it's definitely where it was more geared towards farmland. So it was rolling hills, got real cold, but he doesn't hunt. He doesn't eat, like, it gets too cold for him for gun hunting, because it's like he's 70 years old. He's a little more picky now. It's like, I don't blame him. He primarily spends his time fishing, but just to be able to provide him an opportunity to do it. But also there's people out there that know me, that whether I work with them or they know me from the community, that would like to get them out on hunting. Because I have several pieces of land that are filled with does. Get them out in front of them, and crossbows have a higher efficacy rate than compound bows do. So it's like, well, this would be a good way to introduce them into it. And if they put one down, they get that experience, that adrenaline rush. Maybe they'll want to go that next step forward.
You're exactly right. I mean, you have the same exact mindset that I have with crossbows. And like I said, I came from a county in West Virginia where it was archery only. We didn't even have a gun season. So when crossbows were being thought of and introduced, I was like, absolutely not. This is only going to lead to the worst things and the gun seasons. And our deer numbers are going to be compromised and all this stuff, but actually stepping back 5 or 10 years later and seeing the benefits of it from an adult perspective and a more mature mindset, it's unfathomable why you would not want that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Especially like when we're constantly seeing a decline in hunting participation, especially that 18 to 25-year-old range. So it's like with the popularity of like The Walking Dead and such, then that kind of creates some curiosity. At least I don't know how it translated in the shop, but seeing somebody out there hunting with a crossbow, granted it's using it in a movie, but a little unrealistic. But whatever gets people interested in doing, kind of similar to what Katniss did for the Hunger Games. I mean, that really saw a big uptick. I saw that in the S3DA shoot last summer, where there was a lot of females. There's probably a good 20 to 30 kids out there between that 9 years of age all the way up to 17, 18 years of age out there shooting bows. It's like, that's a great thing. And like a lot of those kids, a lot of those gals got their influence from that movie. So it's like, hey, whatever gets them out there, gets them in front of and creating more memories. Cause it's just, it's a cool thing about archery. It doesn't matter who you are. So you can become an elite shooter at any age, as long as you have the drive and the passion for it. And it's like, you might as well take advantage of your eyesight when it's young. Cause I tell you what, man, I had to switch to a magnifier this year. But before I did buy it though, I'd spent a lot of time digging through the DNR book. And I did all kinds of different keyword searches, but then I just typed in archery and looked through it. And in Wisconsin, you can use a magnifier out there hunting. So, which is good. I like that appreciation. So this way, it's just a higher efficacy. So this way, then when I'm pulling back in a release, I'm able to see that arrow make great penetration. Because the 7 years I've been shooting bow, my eyesight is deteriorated because I'm looking in front of computers because I work IT. So it's like your distance, your in order to maintain your strength in your eyesight, you need to be in an atmosphere, in a realm where you're always strengthening your eyesight, always looking at different lengths and such. And that's something that I took was where I'm looking for. Took it for granted when I was actually working in physical labor and actually like looking at distances, because I used to make those arm bars, those cross arm bars, when you're driving down, you see those attached to telephone poles and stuff like that. Used to make those all the way from 48 inches all the way up to 142 inches long. And just absolutely massive, and different sizes, different lengths, but they're all designed for that high endurance for the crosswinds, because these crossarm beams go anywhere between 60 to 300 feet up in the air. So we had to really over-engineer them so this way they would perform properly. So if there was a nasty windstorm, that's gonna survive, and also they're designed to also be reused too as well. If it didn't break a certain threshold. So we had everything was all tested out. So, and that's what I did for a long period of time. Now it's like I stand in front of a computer. So having a magnifying glass, I use a 4X, and you see, the second you put it up to your eyes, it's immediate relief. So your confidence goes up when you're throwing arrows further down.
Now, how does that when you're dealing with rain and snow, how does that affect it?
I'm sure there's going to probably be issues with it, but I didn't get it until this season. So last season when I hunted, it was just me and the bow. That's it. It wasn't until, I don't know, a couple weeks ago that I actually bought the magnifier for it. So I'm sure it's going to throw some issues with it. I know I shot with the guy last year that had a nice 3D scope on his, and we were just doing 3D target at an HHA USA event. And he managed to make it work, but it's like as soon as he got done shooting, he had to put a cover over it. So this way, then it would be able to see, because he used a 6X magnifier, and then the peep was even is a high end peep too as well, because you had to have a clarifier on it. Yep. Anything above 6. So it's like, so for him, he was able to shoot and shot very, very well. It's just that with the rain stuff, like he immediately, once he got done shooting, he put in like a rain cover. So this way I kind of keep that water off, but still when I removed it off, it's as we got to the last 2 targets, he didn't have a single spot of dry cloth on him to wash it off. So it's basically just kind of experience built in with instinct and going from there.
Yeah, I remember when I used to shoot tournaments and stuff, once it got wet, I mean, it just made for a rough tournament.
And I don't
get clean.
I don't think they make a. I don't think there's a film on the lens on the magnifiers as far as I'm aware of. Mine's just straight up glass. So you could probably put a Rain-X on there, like a Rain-X wipe, and to use that in an anti-fog. But I don't know. I'm not going to do it because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you call the manufacturer.
I'm Jake with HHA Sports, and today we're going to talk a little bit about our dovetail sights and how they're going to fit on the new Matthews V3X. So as you'll see, I have a Tetra Max Tournament Edition sight on this 33-inch V3X. All of our dovetail sights, the Tetra and the Tetra Max, will fit on the V3X. Also, in the next couple of weeks, you'll see us come out with a shorter dovetail version. It'll just be our short bar version, which will also fit on the V3X on both the 29 and 33-inch model. One question that we've gotten pretty frequently lately is the windage adjustments on your Tetra and Tetra Max bow sights on the new Matthews bow. And this year we came out with the infinite adjust plate, which you'll see on the front end of your sight. So when they're going to be able to tell you what you can or cannot do, but definitely get one of the covers. Go that route. I mean, I think some of the best stuff I've used is actually called cat crap. It's got a weird name, but we used to use it underground and stuff because our safety glasses would fog up a lot and stuff. And
Okay.
I think we kept it in the refrigerator even, but
really?
I haven't seen it in years, but they may or may not be in business. But I think it's called cat crap, as weird as that sounds.
I think maybe they struggle with the name. People didn't want to have cat crap sitting in their refrigerator.
In your eye.
Or in your eye. But I know JT Goggles came out with a lot of different chemical or solution to use for, because like when you're playing paintball and you're heavy breathing, especially in the earlier, or depending on how the humidity sets, it'll definitely fog up your lenses. And so they really came through and pioneered a good solid solution to spray on the inside of your mask, so this way you wouldn't be fogging up.
Yep.
So I figured that'd be the next logical step. I think JT's still around. They've been around for the paintball industry for 30, 40 years. They're kind of pretty much set the industry standard when it comes down to it. But now we were talking about like the inflation and such, and with traveling more, do you think you're going to be able to do another, like with this upcoming season? Granted, like the gas prices weren't that expensive last fall, but do you think you're going to be able to consider making these trips out west again?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to personally hold me back. But I see it holding a lot of people back from traveling and things like that, because it's not just fuel prices that have increased. It's also hotels. It's everything there are food, even going to the grocery store. So like the cost of living and inflation has increased everything. And we've seen a huge increase from gas prices a couple of years ago till gas prices now. And anytime you see that hike, people are more likely to stay home. I've actually kind of started planning this year to maybe hunt some closer states, maybe Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia only, but I might have an opportunity on the horizon to hunt like a lot more this year. So I don't think that money's going to slow me down from going where I want to be in life. But I can definitely see how it's going to have a negative impact on the traveling for the hunting side of things.
Yeah, that is very true. And with the internet these days, there's more than one way to make money. I know for myself, like between all the projects I have going, it's like I don't see the inflation holding me back. But the joys of being in the world and like that, like, and especially if you want to try to book hunt someplace, like, hey, I want to hunt out here. It's like a lot of times they may just invite you into your home, or they'll give you an opportunity to park your camper. Because I have a camper, and like that's what we were going to do this past spring, if we were able to, like we were talking about earlier with my buddy Craig, to go out to Nebraska and go hunt some Merriam's. I have a pop-up camper, and it's like it worked out perfectly because we'd be closer to our spot, and every place I looked at had electrical hookup, so that I could just simply plug in a space heater and keep the place nice and warm and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, when I was last time I was in Wisconsin, I just hopped on the Airbnbs and just bounced around until I found a place that I enjoyed, and everything was pretty. Don't get me wrong, but I had a harder time finding deer sign and stuff like that and places to hunt for a while. Once I found that, man, it was easy to lock in and stuff. So just planning ahead. I mean, the biggest thing right now that I would recommend everybody do is if you know you're going, start planning ahead. If you know you're going to stay in a hotel, start shopping around for prices. I mean, because everything seems to have a negative impact on our budgets right now with this higher inflation costs. And you look at interest rates for buying a house. I mean, they were under 3 for 30-year loans not too long ago. Now they're almost 5.
Yeah.
That's supposed to combat inflation, but somebody that's wanting to buy a house right now, I'm not very happy about it.
Yeah, this is an odd story here, this is a story about my ex's husband was telling me that there was a house up for sale nearby his place, and his friend became a realtor and stuff like that because, like, why not? It's something he can do in the part-time gig when he's not working with the fire department. And you got a listing, but there was water leakage in the foundation, and he took it off the market because he wanted them to fix it. Well, they didn't want to fix it. They dropped him, found somebody that had didn't have the same morals that he has, and then they on the market not even 24 hours and it's sold. It's like that person that bought that house probably overpaid, has a tremendous 30-year mortgage on top of that, and now they have this water issue that they're gonna have to battle with come next spring, because or I don't know what the water damage was or how it's getting in, but that's something that could be an issue all throughout the upcoming summer too.
Yeah, and that's a sad thing right now. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to overpay just because I want it right now. I'll be patient. I'll wait till the housing market drops if it's going to. I mean, you talk to your local realtor, and they're like, "Oh, it's just going to keep going up." But I've seen it start to slow down in the last month in this area. Houses were lasting 1 to 2 days on the market, and people were stopping bids. Multiple houses that I looked at were bouncing. Or people were putting in offers $20,000-$30,000 over asking price, and the asking prices were inflated. People that had bought homes just as little as 2 years ago were flipping those houses and not doing anything to them for $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 higher than what they had paid for them. You can't blame them.
No.
Heck, I had a buddy right in the beginning of all this kind of boom on the real estate side of it. Basically, a realtor knocked on their door and said, "Hey, I've got somebody interested in buying your house. This is their price." And he said, "Okay, we'll be out." And they couldn't turn the money down. I mean, it was just so much more than what they had in it. So they're just like, "Yeah, we'll find another place to go. They can have it." So, I mean, it's crazy to think about. People are willing to overpay for things like homes and vehicles right now. And then we turn around and everything is increased. The cost of where does this money keep coming from? I mean, government might be printing it, but it ain't coming in my pocket. I can assure you that.
Yeah, the more they print, the more the value is, more the dollars devalued and such. And my wife has noticed that even with the car market, because she does a lot of consumer loans for a bank that she works for, and that was about a month and a half ago. They've already started seeing that NADA started catching up and catching the inflation. So now these dealerships have these vehicles they overpaid for. Now they got to figure out how to cut that cost. But the banks are given, or if the lender and the person's pulling out the loan pays attention, is like, just kind of hold off and not make these large purchases and such. Because I'm glad we haven't made a purchase on anything yet, so we're kind of keeping our eye on the ball and see what's going on. Because listening to like Chris Crone, Grant Cardone, and stuff like that, they're saying that there's actually a housing shortage. There's actually a demand that can't be met yet, because they're in the hole by like 7 or 8 million homes that they're in a hole for, that people want to buy homes for. And it's just an interesting situation we're going to put ourselves in. We're going to see a major reset as we move towards the quantum financial switch. And it's granted, it's, people can say it's conspiratorial, but I'm more into spoiler alerts. And the World Economic Forum has been pretty on the money when it comes down to what they're manipulating.
Yeah, I keep holding on to a little bit of cash. And I'm like, well, when these stocks drop, I'm going to buy them too.
That's what I've been doing too. I've been paying attention to which cryptos have fallen under ISO compliance and buying those up a little at a time, like $10 here, $15, $20, not a lot, but it's like, they'll add up. And it's like, you be patient, because these cycles go through every 4-year cycles, pretty much go through election cycles. So right now everything's on sale. So if you're just patient, they'll skyrocket back up again. It just, yeah, it's the biggest thing about it, is like stacking that cash, because we go through this cycle every 10 years, every 10 to 12 years, we seem to go through a cycle. So it's like, it's one of those things where just be patient and go from there.
Yeah, that's a smart thing. I mean, even as a consumer of, say, if you're wanting to buy some hunting gear this year, chances are the costs are going to be a little higher than what they were last year. I've been paying attention to a lot of retailers recently, and they've just added subtly like an extra 10 or $20 on their products.
And it's so true.
Maybe a couple bucks. I mean, those percentages add up, but the problem is the costs that they're having to pay. They're paying more money to truck put that equipment, to get that product from point A to point B. They're paying more for materials. And heck, you couldn't buy a house, or you couldn't build a house right now for what you can buy them for because of the cost of materials. So it's going to affect everything in the hunting community, not just gas, but also what we're purchasing.
Even look at, not to pick on Hoyt, because Hoyt makes a solid product, but their price tag for their bows have gone up. I mean, when I first started shooting bows, like back in 2014, 2015, their average Hoyt was 1,400. Then it was up to 1,500, 1,600, 1,700. Now they're almost $2,000 for the bow.
Yep.
And so it's like, and they have great engineering behind them, great products. So it's like, now it all comes down to how quick do you want to buy that Hoyt? Because if you wait 3 years, that bow has lost like 75% of its value.
Oh, absolutely. And PSE's got a bow, those carbon bows that they're producing now, and they're really close to that $2,000 mark. But one of the cool, weird things that we seen this year at the ATA shows, these big players didn't show up. And some of it was up to do with how much money it costs for like Hoyt or Matthews to show up. But the rumor at the time was Hoyt had so many pre-orders for their products that if they can just produce what they've already got sold, it's going to be their most profitable year ever. This year. So like them not showing up to the ATA show was like a big deal, but it just shows that from COVID, we've seen a huge increase in people buying new hunting or entering hunting, buying new products, buying hunting license. We've seen that increase because people couldn't travel. They had to figure out a way to spend money. So they started buying recreational products. So it actually benefited the hunting community or the hunting industry as a whole because people had to find outlets to stay closer to home and they wanted to spend money some way, shape, or form. And some people picked up hunting.
Yeah, and fishing too as well.
Yeah,
my wife can
as well.
My wife was telling me she did so many boat loans last year because she's kind of the boat guru when it comes down to buying a boat, because she just kind of knows the loopholes when it comes down to dealing with Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. And I don't think they do boats in Illinois, but it's like how many people are looking for a different way of subsistence living, because I think this is a good opportunity for us to segue into my next thing. Is like, there's a lot of people going back to the old ways, learning how to can, how to grow their own food, how to eat, becoming self-sustaining, because the government's going to done such a poor job of regulating the price tag because of all the bigger conglomerates, because there's only a handful of people that can control all the meat processing, all the manufacturing for all the factory farming and stuff. And so people are now resorting to planting their own garden, going back, learning how to can, looking how to dehydrate, looking how to smoke. I mean, I bought a smoker. I'm learning how to smoke stuff now.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point that you brought up. And I grew up in an area where that never really left. I mean, people still had gardens. You still had grandparents that had a whole basement full of canned food. Sometimes it was edible. Sometimes it was 20 years old or something like that. And canning was still a big thing. But so I didn't really see that decrease. I mean, I've got a garden in the backyard and I don't even hardly eat vegetables, but somebody's going to eat it. So. But as far as wild game, I mean, that's going to translate in the hunting side of it. When people can't go out and regularly, you look at the cost of beef and how much it has increased, the cost of a bag of corn. Heck, like people buy deer corn and stuff like that. It's legal to bait in West Virginia and Ohio. And what I was paying $5.50, $6 a bag for last year was $10 a bag this past year. So, it's a huge increase in the price of that. So it translates into every aspect of our life, not just hunting, not just the fuel that we put in our vehicle to drive back and forth to work. And we've got to figure out creative ways like learning going out and pursuing wild game. Mm-hmm. A buddy of mine just lost his hunting property because the landowner realized that the cost of food was going up. So they said, hey, these deer living on my property are now going to be a food source for me.
Okay.
So and that individual no longer has access to some big bucks in Ohio. And it's unfortunate, but when the cost of things rise, either you have to start paying lease payments or things like that, or people start seeing value in wild game and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of glad that we don't have enough population to support market hunting. So that's a big win right there. And it's, you got to be, it's just very interesting in how what we're going to see over the next couple of years, if we're going to see an increase of poaching and such. I mean, heck, I was reading an article yesterday from Pat Durkin. He lives over in Madison. He's friends with with Steve Ranella and Doug Dern and such. So that he wrote an article about a guy that was 78 years old. He was illegal. He got gored this past fall or this past January by a 10-pointer. And the DNR were going out there to do the investigation. They found out he was illegally baiting, because there's certain counties here in Wisconsin you can bait in. I've never got behind baiting. I never understood, because I always, like, my dad, like Iowa, you could never bait. So it's like, it was always basically working with the farmer, paying attention how everything moves, and just kind of using the local food source. Now it's like with food plots becoming a great blessing, honestly, because I think it provides that aspect for them to provide that nutrients over the course of the winter. Because that's like the last 3 years we've had some very light winters. I mean, we've had a couple cold weeks, but nothing like compared to 2013 when we saw 100 some days below zero. So where we're now, it's like we're not as bad, but it's nice to see that the technology's come along to provide long-term feeding sources for them.
Yeah, and that comes with not only the technology, but also the mindset.
Yes.
When you start transitioning into land, like wildlife management, rather than just QDMA. Just like, I want to shoot older bucks. Okay, I also want to have the right food sources, cover, bedding, habitat, everything in one. And we've seen a huge increase in the awareness and participation of that within the hunting community.
So here's a question for you. So what do you think about baiting? Do you think it's a good thing or is it a bad thing? And what's your point on or what's your viewpoint on each one of it? Like what you think of that?
All right, we'll just start with is it legal in the state in which you're hunting, or the county or area? So in the state of West Virginia, there's areas that it's legal to bait. There's areas that it's not. For instance, public versus private. You cannot bait on public ground, but you can on private. There's also parts of the state that are designated CWD zones, so you cannot bait in those areas, in the risk of spreading CWD at those bait sites, because deer and other animals are congregated into one area. So once you get through that, then you have the ethical side of it. Is hunting over bait something that you're willing to do or you're wanting to do? So for me, I've put bait or corn, usually just deer corn or corn, whole corn, out. I don't know. I've been hunting hard for 16 years, 17 years. Probably each one of those years I've had a pile of corn out somewhere. I can say, honestly, I've probably killed 2 bucks over corn in that time frame. And that wasn't until Ohio, actually hunting in those late seasons. But for me, it's a way to inventory deer, especially early before seasons kicks in. Usually by the time our archery season kicks up, you've got one weekend, maybe, if the weather's good, that you're going to kill something over bait. Until then, those deer are going to go nocturnal. But it's a great way to inventory deer. Is there health benefits to feeding corn? No. Now, if you can spend the money on some of these higher protein contents and antler max and all this great stuff out there, yes, you're going to create a healthier deer herd in the process. You're maybe not going to grow bigger antlers, but you're going to have a healthier deer herd. Nevertheless, I've never went that route. I've always went with the goal of inventorying deer. And for instance, when a gun season comes in, what I like to do is reduce the pressure on my property. So I don't usually do a whole lot of gun hunting. So I'll go put a bunch of bait out in the middle of the property, basically, walk away from it, and give those deer a safe place to come to during that time frame. The other side of it is, I know, and this kind of originates from Texas, because it's like, if I'm not baiting, my neighbor is. And you can drastically see, because I drive a lot for work, and I'll be driving down the road and I'll be like, man, that's an awfully good deer trail. I guarantee you there's a feeder nearby. So I'll start paying attention the next time I'm going down the road, and the next time, and I'll look and I'm like, yep, that guy's got a deer feeder. His neighbor, why doesn't that on the same face of the hill? Why is there no deer trail at that same level? Well, if he's over here baiting, then I'm going to have a pile of deer corn so I can bring in deer as well. So then you get like, if you're going to do it, then I've got to do it to keep up with you and that side of things.
Mm-hmm. I think okay. What else?
And there's also, it makes it easier to kill deer. I mean, at the end of the day, if you just want to kill a deer, it makes it flat out easier. That early season time frame, and then the late season in December when food sources are rare. Are you going to kill something during the rut, which most of the time people are hunting in November? Probably not. You might get a deer to stop, or a mature deer, I should say, to stop at that corn pile. But at the end of the day, if you're going to do it, you have to plan that out accordingly. Those deer will pattern you just like you pattern them. So
exactly,
it produces challenges. Like I said, I've hunted over a corn pile a lot in life, but I can only recall shooting 2 bucks off a corn pile in my entire life.
Mm-hmm. I think that's where it comes down to play, where they are going to, they're going to learn how they, when you come and replenish them, they're going to pattern you because they're going to smell that scent. And especially if you're urinating out there, you're going to have that pheromone that's released because the meat, because if you're a carnivore, there's going to have a smell like that, and that lingers out in the air for a long time, because without the right chemicals to break it down fast, it can be out there for a long period of time. Brian Sparks, he's been on my podcast. He does Nelson Creek Outdoors, but it's his name brand is Lucky 7. This guy, he knows deer. So now it's weird because it's like part of me wants it to be legal all the way across the board, because what it does is allows the hunter to make that decision for themselves, but also allows them to have the rights to it. Because if you start letting the anti start chipping away, because like kind of like right now, like some states, the antis are going after urine smells and urine scents. And some people could argue that it's CWD or EDH that they're trying to prevent. But all it is to me is that somebody's trying to take away a privilege from mine. And whether some people will have different point of view on scents. Some say it doesn't work. Some say it does work. Or some like they really know what's going on in a deer's head. They know it doesn't work at all. So it is a. I just think that like it should be left up to the hunter, kind of like with crossbows.
Yep.
And this way, then it's like you have all your rights. It's this way somebody's not telling you what you can and cannot do. I guess it's the less government side of me talking out.
Yeah, but if there's a scientific data that supports and proves that why we should or should not do this, then I'm up for that as well. I mean, I'm up for real data. Do I believe that if I put a pile of corn out that it's going to kill every deer in the county? No, absolutely not. Because I guarantee you the cornfield that my neighbor's got has just as much corn in it, and they're going to go there if not.
I think it's just like, I feel like it should almost be like, not like, we should move away from baiting and just do food plots. I think food plots, because it will provide a bigger nutrient source for multiple animals.
Yep. And I don't disagree with that. I mean, I live in an area now where food plots are very feasible. But I come from southern West Virginia where you don't have flat ground. You don't have those opportunities without removing a huge amount of trees in order to get the right sunlight into those areas, because the only flat ground is where a dozer blade touched the ground when they were logging it. So food plots for me were not an option. There's some reclaimed surface mines and stuff like that where it would be an option nowadays, but the truth of the matter is, at where I hunted growing up, it was not feasible. So my food plot was a 50-pound bag of corn.
Yeah, because here, even like when you look at a topographical map, you look in the driftless area here that spans from across all the way down to the Illinois border there. It's like there's places that there's no, that's not even feasible, especially if you look from the Mississippi and you go east, that's just all up and down hills and crevices. And it's like you can't even get heavy equipment back in there anyways to even attempt to do that. So there's deer back there. I've seen them. Like when I'm going down to Prairie du Chien, I'm gonna go check out Cabela's. I'll see deer up in those bluff side. But it's when you look up at it, it's like, man, this is going to be a bitch if I shoot something. Cause it's like, if they're all the way up the top, right, I get all the way back down the bottom. It's like here, it is definitely going to provide a certain amount of thought process. Like, do I want to put the energy to go bring something down? But that's usually where your biggest bucks are too. It's a common trend where a lot of folks that are around here, these parts, if you want to shoot your biggest bucks, they're going to be sitting up on the very top, 600 yards up in the air.
Yep, you better have a buddy that you can call to come help you out in those bad situations.
Oh, right. Yeah. Cause it's like, the best part is like getting it downhill. It's like you getting up there and not being, not trying to make too much noise.
Lost you.
Yep. We're back. Yeah. It just froze out for a second there. So what do you have planned for the upcoming summer?
So this summer, I'm going to do a lot of work on the business. I'm trying to create a lot of content. I call it evergreen content, or it's kind of what it's called in the blogging world, but gear reviews, blog posts. I've actually teamed up. I know you're more like the recipes and you like stuff like that as well, but I actually teamed up with Hunt Chef. So I'm bringing a lot of their recipes from YouTube videos and putting it into print.
Nice.
So that's been a nice partnership for that side of it. Really wanted to tap into that market just for traffic to the website. But my goal is right now is to work on the website. I don't really have like a whole lot of trips or anything like that planned right now. I'm kind of leaning towards the company that I work for just put out a new HR policy. So I'm thinking if this comes into play and I can take 6 weeks off without pay, I think I'm going to do that during November and I'm going to travel. If not, I may just walk away from the day job this hunting season and see what I can turn my dream, take my little side hustle business into a full-time role and just jump head first into it. And one of the things that I've got to do is build that email list. So if I can, in next year in the wintertime, like once these we call them trade shows and stuff like that, start going around trade shows and trying to figure out ways to be creative and grow this email list so I can do the email marketing. And basically what I do is post deals on hunting products each and every day, go through a huge list of online retailers, whether it be direct to consumer manufacturers like KUIU or Walmart or Amazon or Cabela's or anything in between. And if they have a sale or a coupon code or something like that, I make everybody aware of that through that email list and through the website, a little bit of social media as well. So try to be an asset to the consumer, help them save money and get a good deal in the process.
That's so smart. I know, I think his name's Bob the Trail. He does Go Hunt or Go Wild, and listening to his point of view on how a lot of how Facebook is taking people's money, but not really allowing people to what the outdoor world grow their content like on Facebook. So you have to really focus on Instagram, because at least there you can have that drive and such. But he has a couple of good points about it, because even with his social media app, with part of Google and iTunes or the Apple Store, he's having issues with trying to keep his app alive until somebody comes up with a new OS. It's the outdoor world is getting hammered on all sides about trying to. It seems like they're almost trying to kind of keep the self-reliance down, that community down, because a lot of us that are hunters or outdoorsmen, we're self-reliant. We like to go out and get our food and how we need to maintain our quality of life.
You're exactly right. I mean, our rights are constantly under attack, whether it be our hunting rights or whether it be the freedom of speech. And understanding that is one of the biggest hurdles in the whole fight to keep those freedoms and rights. A lot of times we sit back, and you can use the example of you put a frog in water and it gets used to that temperature, and you increase the temperature and you keep increasing the temperature. And what's that frog do? It just sits there because it doesn't know any difference, and it adjusts and it adjusts. And before you know it, that frog's dead because that water's boiling and it can't eat. And that's kind of where we are as a civilization right now in the United States. We just keep looking forward in our direction, and we don't pay attention. We've got blinders on and we don't realize what's going on around us. And it's sad. And until you step out and start working with, if hunting's your passion or if Second Amendment rights are your passion, until you get involved with that and actually start seeing the challenges that people are facing outside of your community and your small world that we live in, then you can actually make a fight, and you see that light bulb come on. You're like, holy crap! At any point in time, there's going to be a bill come across the table that takes my rights away.
It's just a matter of time when it comes down to it. Goring said that they'll never have to do another Holocaust because folks will just line up for it.
You're exactly right.
That's General Goring. He knew psychology very well, and that's why him and Hitler were best of buddies.
Yeah,
it's just nuts. But anyways, man, this was a pleasure chatting with you, dude. I'm looking forward to seeing everything grow with huntinggeardeals.com. Those who follow me, anytime something that you post, I always try to put it on my platform so just people can gain access to it as much as possible. It's all about collaboration, I say.
And I really do appreciate it. Appreciate you sharing your platform that you've got with me. I always enjoy coming in and talking to you. You've got an awesome viewpoint on life, and you always point out things that I don't always see or think of. So it's fun just learning something new. I would like to point everybody towards, we got Memorial Day coming up about the time this thing gets posted. So pay attention to huntinggeardeals.com for that annual Memorial Day sale blog post. So all these online retailers and consumers, or online retailers or in the hunting industry, they're going to have a lot of sales from QU or Sitka or Natchez Shooting Sports, something like that. You'll find that all in one place during that Memorial Day blog post, and I'll send you a link to that when the time comes. So that's going to be a great way to save some money before hunting season gets here, because there's not a whole lot of opportunity between now and the opening day to save money. There's only a few good sales between now and then, so that's going to be a good one that people aren't going to want to miss.
Excellent. Perfect way to end. Thank you, Cam, for coming on. You have yourself a great evening.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.